You make me feel like rock star, but you know what? I'm just a tiny little sand. In any way, today we're going to talk about sea level change. Just a bit of a warning, about maybe 10 minutes in, we're going to do a little experiment. There may be some popping sound. If you're afraid of popping sound, cover your ear. That's about it, right? So the whole story here is indeed to try to talk about science and how do we go about understanding this sea level phenomenon. But before we go any further, there's a bit of an introduction. Just a disclaimer, this is really not my house. Actually, it's my cousin Oprah Winfrey's house. The reason I put this out is because I have been very well known, by the way. Well known only in the bad sense, that I'm such a bad guy. This bad, not even a proper scientist who is actually working at Harvard, but studying for years and years, but then trying to cheat. The most important thing is that I'm one of those mass murder deceiver, that I'm taking dirty money from the meanest villain on earth in a plot to allow mass murder by weather chaos. That's what I'm doing actually, by denying this global warming effect by CO2. The worst thing that is possible is that they say I actually have a payment to the Swiss bank account that are not shown. Please, check my pocket, guys. And then I'm also being called many names. One of the popular names is actually I'm a prostitute. He said that I'm one who sells ability and talent for an unworthy purpose. And then I only pretend to be a climate scientist. To tell you the truth, you call me all you want. I've been studying this subject for almost 30 years now, right? And so that's kind of long enough. In fact, I'm a slow learner because I really want to understand the truth. So today, the story I'm sharing with you is that this sea level actually is rising, but we have to understand the context. How much is it that is rising? And what is it caused by? This is basically the question that can be answered by science properly, right? So we need to go about how to understand that. And this is just an example of things that I do. It's a labor of love. It's never for money, never for money. It's a book about the sun. It's actually about a very interesting period about studying sunspot. If any of you know about sunspot, you all know sunspot, this dark spot that appears on the surface of the sun, as I showed in my first video. This is a period in which the sunspot disappeared for almost 70 years, which is a very long time, and people name it the Maunder minimum. I happen to have a passion for these people who actually took a photograph of the sun every single day for their whole life. This is a dedication of the scientists, so it's properly named after them, and I wanted to let their story be out there for all of you to know who is this Maunders, the Maunders. In fact, it's a husband and wife team, okay? So this is actually a much more difficult book to read, but I make it available. Whoever wants to read it, I'm not selling books, so you can read it for free. Just ask me. I have the PDF file. I don't care what the publishers say, by the way. And then another thing that is very crazy about this business, as you can see, there is this professor of musicology. Can you believe that climate change, climate science is all now, has some statement coming from music professor from actually Austria, who is actually claiming that we are such as bad people. In fact, these statements are aiming at me and Lord Monckton. James, I don't know if you want to be in the club. That they want to have death penalty for people like us because they say we are promoting this denialism about carbon dioxide causing global warming and causing all this problem. As I show in my first talk, really there's nothing much to be concerned about in that sense. And even in the actual problem, the number one scare of all the global climate change issue, you all know that it's actually sea level change. If next year I'll be lucky enough to have a chance, I will talk about polar bear because that's another cute story.
Just to point out that global warming has all these natural disasters which they, as their insurance companies, declare as acts of God.
Yes.
So if they do hold us responsible for it, that technically makes us God in their eyes.
That we cannot presume to uphold, but
they're going to look rather silly, aren't they?
I know. It's one of those rhetorics that sometimes it seems very naive, but these days they are very aggressive. So I just want to be reminded. But here's the bottom line that's summarized in this sort of simple tweet. There's never been in the history of science that an area of really properly a scientific field called climate science has they tried so hard and so long for the public to accept their conclusion without any challenging. I was born to be a scientist, by the way. So when I see anything that's not right, I'll tell the truth. In fact, I challenged Al Gore, Vice President Al Gore. Do you think you can run faster than me? I think if it were to be the truth that CO2 causing all this problem, I would definitely go out there and tell everybody in the world, jumping up and down is dangerous, and we better do something about it, right? Unfortunately, it's not the truth. That's the problem. That's why I'm not saying that this carbon dioxide is causing any major problem at all. In fact, as I told you, what is carbon dioxide? It's food for the plants and the animal kingdom, isn't it? Including us, right? It's a very good thing. We need more of carbon dioxide in the air. So the talk has only two parts, because this is just to target towards, the theme of the talk is basically scientific measurements. How do you measure this thing? One of the measurements is through satellite, sending radar signal and then reflected it back so that you can try to deduce how much the sea surface has changed, okay? Another technique is just a very, very old standard technique. It's called tide gauges, where you put around all the piers, coastal region. What is that instrument, guys? Do you know what it is? It's really very simple. It's just basically a ping pong ball afloat with a tube in it. That's about it. Somebody go out there and take a measurement, how relatively it's going up and down, okay? That's basically it. And I want to tell you the problem in all these measurements, how difficult it is to talk about global sea level change. But the standard story that's being told by this United Nations group called the IPCC, right, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is that, first of all, the sea level is kind of changing not too much. Even all the data point is actually very small. It's over 300 years, you know, because we went through a little ice age and then all the ice glacier melted, then we rise a little bit. And that amount is very tiny, by the way. And then they say, oh, it's going to accelerate. It's going to look like a hockey stick. So beware, because later I'll show you how Boston is going to be totally gone by the time you reach actually 50 years old. And science, as you can see, according to them, this is all settled science. So who is Willie Soon to try to tell you all this stuff? I have to tell you, on this sea level story, I guess I am among the most careful person to study this issue, actually. I carefully look into it. In fact, nobody ever gave a talk like this before. Until I came along, I decided to show you why all the measurements are really problematic. This is what in science you call it, you know, if you don't have measurement, you really don't know what you're talking about. So, in terms of acceleration, if you want to burn your eye, try to tell the difference between blue line and the red curve. This is basically the situation that you measure the sea level change for almost 150 years. It is rising, okay? And look at what happened. People that claiming that sea level is accelerating is trying to tell you that you can tell the difference between blue and red curve. Can you guys tell the difference? That means there's no acceleration, really. And worse yet, in this kind of chart, you know what they're missing in scientific measurements? Every measurement comes with something called the error bar, the uncertainties. How confident are you in terms of the value being that particular value, right? So you need an error bar. And if you put an error bar, I guess you just couldn't tell anything, okay, essentially. So the whole point is to try to tell you about this very, very bad science, right, about sea level and accelerating. Because once they don't see the sea to be accelerating, they say, oh, all the ice sheets is going to melt, okay? And that's the story that I can also share with you, the details. How does the ice sheets actually works, and the melt water and so on and so forth. The first test that we have here is actually, if you look at that image, who is the first American president? And you can see somebody answer. This could be an internet kind of myth jokes, but anyway, I thought it's cute. Please don't answer get the image. I'll kick you out of this class. Even I'm a student myself. But this is the situation now. In all this kind of situation, it's never about the facts. So this person is called actually father of global warming, not father of the Constitution, James Madison. But James Hansen right here, who's a former, by the way, he's since retired, of Goddard Institute for Space Study down in New York, he's actually trying to promote that by 2100. By the way, the sea level has been rising by no more than a few inches over the last 150 years or so. And these guys are saying that we're going to have 16.4 feet by another 80 years or so, okay? You tell me. So Florida will be gone according to him. And I want to show you the amount of collusion. And then you got Al Gore in this Inconvenient Truth movie promoting the same numbers that New York City will be completely swamped. It will be swamped by this 5 meter or 16 foot kind of sea level rise. So definitely everything is gone in that sense. That shows you that this is not about science. This is all these politicians running around with their mouthpiece. talking nonsense essentially. It's so embarrassing. So is Willie Soon really really exaggerating? The short answer is absolutely not. Because in the UN Environmental Program report in 2005, October, they actually say that there will be 50 million climate refugees because of the sea level rise by 2010. Guys, what year is it now? Please remind me. Huh? 2018, right? So have we heard about any of these 50 million climate refugees caused by sea level rise? No, right? And you know what happened? If it doesn't work, right? So by the way, it published in 2010, so put it that way, their hypothesis or conjecture has been disproven. And then, guess what happened? Then come along 2011, because it's 1 year past, barely 1 year past, there's a UCLA professor. This is where I say that you have to be careful when you go to university, what kind of propaganda you're getting. This professor from University of California, Los Angeles, saying there will be 50 million environmental refugees. This time it's not by 2010. She changed it because it's 2011, she said by 2020. So, come on, we got 2 more years to wait. Okay, guys, I can't wait, right? I can't wait. Let's see. Not only that, that's not enough. 50 million, that's kind of too small, not scary enough. Is it more scary? You want to be more scary? Here, World Bank just issue, beginning of this year, right around March, say there will be 140 million right now. I don't even know what year they're saying now. They say 2050. Okay, that one I was also probably alive to see this, to check them. So I'm telling you, the UN IPCC is giving you a split pants, right? All the thing they're telling you is just terrible stuff, okay? It's just untruth. Now you come to Boston, you guys probably are not scared now. Please shake your leg, it's really scary. And they say, Boston, you guys know this structure. The storm is coming. But the problem is, you know what? They have the data for 150 years, didn't show anything. They say, okay, let's go to 80 more years. And now these guys are not interested in 100-year story. They are telling you that they have a climate model that can do 10,000 years ahead. I mean, can you believe that? I shake my head. They always do sort of things like this. And we always sit around, nobody say anything. Al Gore, thank you very much, you're so smart. So it is. They make a model, so it must be true. That's the kind of thing. Creature from the Blue Lagoon. And here's the fact, guys. We need facts. Data can show you anything. Here's the tide gauges data collected at Boston. They started about 1920s. Good data. Going about here until 2018, 2017. And that's the curve. You guys want to know what that rate is? Actually, the important thing is to know how much is changed, right? So it's of the order of 2.8. So about 3 millimeters per year. Please. Anybody have a ruler? You want to know what a 3 millimeter is? Later I'll show you in terms of the size of the pencil needle. And then the carbon dioxide level, of course, is going in a very different form. So it's not quite linear. So it's doing some kind of a exponential rise in that sense. So it really doesn't make sense. So I want to tell you now the first story is about this global sea level acceleration using modern satellite. I'll explain what that satellite is about. In fact, this is what they've been promoting this sort of stuff for quite many years. The normal people, actually as lay people, I think you'll be very confused because you know what? The data that they show here is actually accelerating. They show that, okay, 0.8 from this time period from 1870 to 1920, and then 2 millimeters per year from here to here, and then lately it's been going about 3. Okay? But you guys don't know. These guys are mixing apple and orange and grapes together and then try to tell you that that's called something else. I don't know what it is that they're doing. You're not allowed to do things like that in science, by the way. And these guys are doing that day in, day out. I'm really embarrassed for science, actually. As a scientist, I humbly disagree with that. Okay? So what would you do? Why would they do such a bad thing? Mixing tide gauges and satellite altimetry data? Why would they do that, actually? Because they want to make that point. It's their storyline, it's their agenda. When they have nothing to prove, they mess around with the data to try to tell you that kind of thing so that you're not foolish enough to go and study the science and be careful about it. This is what I want to tell you. The only reason why we're standing here is that we want you to check and do your own homework. Without doing the homework, you will never be actually learned yourself. There's no point. Okay? And I'll give you an example. You remember James Hansen that I talked about, the big director, the father of global warming? This is one of the papers he published, that he wanted to save the world, actually. With how many distinguished authors? I don't really care. But the problem is that these are the kind of guys who do that in their actual scientific paper. They put the tide gauges data, which is about 1 millimeter per year, and then they add the satellite data, which is showing 3 millimeter per year. I want to show you that the 3 millimeter per year is also not legitimate. Okay? And they add that on. You know, mixing apple and orange is kind of not cool, not correct, no? You cannot create entity that is completely different out of this. So that's basically what he's showing now. In fact, this thing is propagating as recent as you can see in July and August. It's everywhere now. And no scientists are challenging them. And you are actually among the first few that I can show it to you, right? So every time you see this curve, you must ask them why and how you make that data, how you show it. Why are you mixing apple and oranges? It doesn't make sense to me. And also, I will explain to you why that 3 millimeter from that. Oh, but what happened when you do all this bad thing in climate science, by the way? I put a quote. Notice, this is not science. It's very, very clear about our language. Don't let them rob the languages. We're going to be proper about this. So I put a quote there. Guess what happened if you do this sort of thing? This guy got prize. You guys remember about Professor Ramanathan that I showed you in my first lecture? The favorite Pope, Catholic Pope, favorite scientist? He also got another award together with Hansen for basically not telling the truth. Half lies, half truth, whatever it is. They are concerned. No mind that they're concerned, but I only hope that they come to the side of truth. Oh yeah, so in that cartoon joke, of course, you just wait. You know, it's going to be coming. So accelerating very soon. These two sharks are saying. Now, context. I told you, right? 3 millimeter, 1 millimeter per year. What does that mean? You know, what does that really mean? And here I show you a picture of how the sea level has changed from last glacial maximum, where you are sitting right now. We have 2 miles thick of ice 21,000 years ago. Where's the ice now, guys? I see no ice, right? So sea level was so much lower because most of the ice was transferred from the ocean and sit on top here. In North America, in actually North Scandinavia, Fennoscania, right? All these places. And then there are other tiny little patches of ice around. And it's been rising for almost 120 meters. So 1 meter is what? It's about 100 millimeter, right? You multiply by that, what do you get? You get a lot of a millimeter, isn't it? Over this time period. And that's what they're saying. Man is raising the sea level by that little bit over there. So context is very important, right? Yep, that's what I'm trying to tell you, that indeed over this very rapid period, you get at least 50 millimeter per year. So we have seen everything. Planet Earth has seen everything. It's kind of old in that sense. And this is the quote to try to tell you that for that kind of rate, 50 millimeter per year, which is really large, by the way, very rapid, that's equivalent to actually melting about 1.5 to 3 times the Greenland ice sheets we have right now. That's the amount of water that we have on Greenland ice sheets. So to do that, you're not going to have this kind of rate again, because we don't have 3 times the Greenland ice sheets, isn't it? We have only 1, okay? So even if we melt all the Greenland ice sheets, you're not going to get that. So here, I'm going to start with basic tutorial on sea level and the change. I want to tell you how it works. Now, I'm going to do my little experiment, okay, about how you actually can make the sea level to change, okay? Beside tides, beside all this stuff, we want the real sea level to change. The experiment I'm going to do is very simple, by the way. So come on out. Ben and Frank, come on. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to fill this balloon with air. Frankie, you hold it. Tell me how big you want it, right? You guys are not ambitious. Okay, Frankie, hold it. Okay, I want to show you the difference between, I have balloon that filled with air, the balloon filled with water. So for the sea level to rise, warming the air, I tell you, is not going to do much, isn't it? Because you want to warm the sea, right? So you need to warm the water. That's the experiment you need to see. But the first obvious one is, anybody who don't like sound, cover your eye or ear. Frankie, ready? Yep. Boom! Now, second guy, come on up. Now I show you. You guys, have you seen it? You think it's going to break? What's the conjecture, guys? It's going to spill all over the place. Come on, come near him. Ben, come near him. He don't believe. Look here, look here.
Please no.
Heat it's going to transfer. In fact, you're going to take about 10,000 years, roughly, of this volume of water, okay? It's never going to blow. Because there's so much of the heat go. Water is a very good kind of place to keep all the heat. Don't believe me? Do it again. It's never going to blow. Right? So the heat is actually slowly accumulating. So that's the first effect, is to warm the thing. So thermal expansion, okay? The property has increased the volume a little bit, right? And then there are water that is actually coming from storm and all these surges, wind, because wind is blowing and stirring up stuff. And then you have ice sheets. I already told you about ice sheets. And then you have stuff. The most important one that I want to show you is that, you know what? Our land is changing up and down. Do you guys know that because we sit on the ice 20,000 years ago, that much ice, you know what happened to the level here? We are actually moving up because we were pushing it down so much, because so much weight on it. Actually, this area here is definitely moving up. So the sea is not actually rising, it's the land that is moving up, okay? In an area like this. So you can see, ancient historians have seen this. I've seen what was once a solid ground disappear into the sea. I've heard of land risen out of the sea, right? This is, well, you can see this guy almost 2,000 years ago, around Jesus Christ time, right? So there are many, many factors. It's about the coastal dynamic, how the land changes and all this other stuff. It's a bit complicated. That's why this science is complicated. That's why we need proper measurement to try to answer the question, does the sea level change and how much has it changed? And is it really of concerning and that sort of thing? Right? You can see we have a prophet right here. That is the moment when the sea, the rise of the ocean will begin to slow and our planet began to heal. I think he got a little bit enthusiastic there. He obviously didn't do such thing, right? Neither can his power do any such thing. Then there is another physics that you need to know. As you know, planet Earth, we have mass, you know, all these materials, very uneven. This thing is called geoid, G-E-O-I-D. Look it up, actually, study. Actually, the formulation of that is a mathematical formulation from basically the fact that the Earth had gravity and then rotation. Okay? And what it actually creates is that this gravitational is called the mathematical figure of the Earth. Just think about the scale. We are talking about 100 millimeter or even 200, doesn't matter. But the scale of up and down of this gravitational anomaly of different pull and pull in different regions, from the Indian Ocean is about 350 feet down. In the Iceland area, it's of the order of 280 feet. Okay? This makes the measurement of the sea level change very, very difficult because we don't have a reference level. You're trying to detect millimeter out of the things that you need to know from 350 feet, okay, guys? This is why a lot of the statement they make is not very true, especially the satellite measurement, okay? So the first bad assumption I think they did is that they say that the satellite can measure global sea level change very accurately and precisely. In fact, they have a number. They say that they can measure anything from 3 millimeters per year plus or minus. That's the uncertainty, 1 millimeter per year. I say that's baloney. You know why, right? The reason why is that, first of all, the way you measurement is that you have this satellite orbiting the Earth, right? This is actually an active radar instead of passive, meaning you're not doing anything, you're just observing, right? Like a camera from the picture you saw yesterday, right? That's a passive thing. This is an active stuff. You shoot the radar at a particular wavelength. You're standing about 1,300 kilometers up. And then you're going around, you're trying to see the reflected sunlight, the reflected radar signal, so you can have the difference, the timing, because you know exactly the wavelength of your radar, of your signal. But the problem for that 1 millimeter per year accuracy is that you know what? The wavelength of your wave, okay, that they actually use is of the order of 2 to 3 centimeters. So 20 millimeter to 60 millimeter. So can you confirm this millimeter per year accuracy where your wavelength is actually 20 to 40 millimeter? You cannot resolve these changes. Those are all a bunch of lies. I'm sorry that the technical part of these people are somewhat incompetent. Even when they do this sort of thing, they are not careful and then they just want to claim. This is the kind of science experiment cannot fail, right? The bank is too big to fail. We have to bail them all out. This is another one of those examples in science that is terrible. A shame to all of them in that sense. And then they wake up the next day, they tell people that they are scientists. So, to tell you, what would it take to detect 1 millimeter per year? If you want to measure the volume, you guys know the the mathematical numbers, right? 3 times 10 to the minus 8 per year. You know what that is, right? That's about 100 million, right? 10 to the 6 is that. That's small that you need to detect the change. For temperature, it's of the order of 1.5 times 10 to the minus 4. That's 0.0001 degree. Can we measure that well? I don't think so, guys. If you talk about measuring in terms of salinity, so you can try 3 ways. I don't think under any specification that we have a method to measure anything to 1 millimeter per year, which is I'm trying to tell you. Remember, you don't have to remember this number. You're supposed to be able to derive all of this. Okay? So homework, just kidding. So again, context. 1 millimeter. That's it, 1 millimeter. You want to see how small? Please look up your thing to convince yourself, because every time they use number, don't get scared. Whoa, it's so scary, sea level rise, I'm going to be really scared. 5 millimeter is that. So think about it for yourself, right? You always ask questions. Think about it. How big, how small, I want to know. So bad assumption, obviously. And here's the actual data, by the way, the raw data. They started in 1993 by a satellite called Topax. Then they put up another one called Jason 1 and then Jason 2. They got Jason 3 is already up. This is the actual raw data. Most of them, this kind of paper is hidden way somewhere that nobody ever seen it. Nobody ever shown it in public, because they all appear to try to play this kind of hide and seek game. It's very strange, by the way, to do science. You think that science is openly objective and transparency? This is one of the best examples to show you that it ain't so. Okay? So that's the difference of individual satellite measurements, is of that difference. And they tell you that they can combine this together and to detect something 1 millimeter plus or minus 1 millimeter per year. Okay? Think about it. Would that really be true? So the quote I want to tell you is that Jason 1 and Jason 2 is exact replica of each other. And they couldn't even come close, isn't it? If I were to show this back again. Jason 1 and Jason 2, right? Exact replica. They couldn't even set it at the same level. That is the problem of the referencing that I talk about, the geoid, okay? This is very hard problem. It's not a joke. These people are playing everything like a joke. So that's what they say. The final result is 3 millimeter per year. Take it. I'm the God. I'm the guy who tell you everything. I know everything. That's what it is. I say, no. In fact, if you look at the scientists themselves, they say they couldn't explain any of the bias, like 77 millimeter per year bias between 2 satellites. They say they couldn't account, they can only account up to 5 millimeter. So 5 out of 75, tell me how good of a job. They just say that we have to force them to be the same. That is not science. That is baloney, I tell you. I'm going to eat more bologna sandwich after this. Yeah, absolutely not. I'm not going to believe in that. I'm sorry. It's not about belief. It's about showing me the number in the proper way. Explain yourself. Thank you. Please, I hope I finish. So, could it be a problem of just calibration of 3 satellites? Or just one-time issue? Maybe Willie is a bit too harsh. No, I can show you another example. There's another satellite put up by the European. It's called the NVSat. So this is the 4 satellite results that you see. I want to document for you that actually there is a slight change in the number over time. But you cannot see it. You will see it more clearly. And then there's another satellite called GFO. This is the Navy one. Okay, this is all kind of secret stuff. Navy got a lot of information. But they also show that they couldn't measure the thing. In fact, they are not showing sea level rise. What does the Navy satellite altimeter show? That they are actually sea level dropping at 2 millimeter per year, right? See that? You see that? It's not rising, right? Then I'll show you the NVSat. NVSat has much more clearer documentation. By the way, this kind of satellite is not little peanuts, okay? It costs 2.3 billion euros, right? You know, they're all really abusing public money in that sense, right? So big disappointment. It's a big science experiment that failed. So the actual data, as you can see, the raw data is rising at 0.5, and then without justification, because they say, everybody say it's about 2 to 3, so they just push this up. Jason is showing that. So different satellites showing different numbers. Actually, I better move, but I want to show NVSat versus NVSat. This is the one to show you, sorry. So it's about 0.5 unadjusted, and then they say, oh, because everybody say that it's rising, so they push it up. That's basically it. That's what they do. In science, are you allowed to do that? I think if you do your homework like that, you're going to get kicked out of your class. You know, the teacher will say, oh, you know, I'm going to give you an F on that. That's basically what they do. In fact, I caught it so close. This transition changed in 4 days. What kind of measurement is this that you can change your basis from no change to jumping in 4 days? That's how close this madness is, okay? And they definitely don't want you to see this. They say Willie soon will be a madman, right? You know? I don't care what they call me, by the way. So here's an actual quote from actually the world, I would say, the most interesting oceanographer. Very, very knowledgeable. Professor Carl Wunsch from MIT, by the way. He's now at Harvard as an emeritus professor. He said it remained possible. This is some of the honest statement or confession that you can see. That the database is insufficient to compute mean sea level trend with the accuracy necessary to discuss the impact of global warming, as disappointing as the conclusion may be. You all already know that this is actually not a scientific language, right? What about it? What disappointment? If you're not measuring that, you just say you cannot do it. You don't go and promise the government, I'm going to do this better, you give me more money, right? Isn't it? That's the way science works now these days. It's really bad. I'm the guy who don't take no money from government. Got it, got it. So, we are still very concerned, right? Because we're concerned about melting of ice sheets now, right? The Greenland ice sheets and the Antarctic ice sheets, indeed, they hold a lot of water, okay? That is true. But I want to tell you, if you worry about that, you know, you might as well, I don't know what to do because it's going to be a long, long time before you anywhere come close. So here's an example of this. Washington, D.C. It's rising, you know, under the Greenland ice sheet melting. I think Lord Montan would say, if this is Washington, D.C., what's the problem? That is his usual punchline. Oh, you don't like it? I'm going to show you Harvard University, guy. By the way, they are so good at making those kind of cartoons now, and these people claim to be some kind of special project and smart scientists. So Harvard rising 12 feet or 25 feet. Oh, goodbye, Harvard. Bye-bye. Let's start. Now, Antarctic ice sheets. The story for Antarctic ice sheet after about last 50 years of research is that what we found is that most of the area under the western Antarctic part is actually melting. That is true. By the way, it's really true. It's important to tell the whole truth. But what they found now is that you see the blinking dots? Those are deep inside. You can use radar to penetrate this below the ground. What is happening? It's actually volcanoes and all the heat sources from the bottom. It's actually melting this. Have nothing to do with this carbon dioxide. It cannot do this kind of melting. It's nonsense, these people. Okay, they are not interested, and worse yet, they tell you that you cut CO2. We ask them, is the ice sheet going to grow big? What happened if it grows really big? Then we're in trouble, isn't it? Here's the number. If you worry about that kind of melting, I want to tell you, this is very good numbers to remember. If we take the rate, the current melting rate of the Antarctic ice sheet, especially just the western part, by the way, the eastern part is accumulating, so we have more ice are building up on that part, okay? That it's only very, very tiny a part of the thing, so it's 0.01% of the Antarctic mass. But you see how long if you really want to melt Antarctic ice sheets? 120,000 years. That's kind of long, isn't it? So I don't think I'm going to worry too much of that because it's going to come and go in that sense. And then I'm going to talk about a very important set of failed experiment, by the way. This is a very elegant experiment. It's actually to measure gravity with two satellites following each other because they know precision. They can measure things in a very nice way. But unfortunately, that experiment also failed. It's a good idea. I'm trying to not discourage that we should not pursue the science. The science should be studied. But when the result is not correct, you got to say it's not correct. You're not going to sell the government, I'm going to build another one, right? You have to explain why you failed. Here's the result. That the actual data by GRACE satellite, another satellite, this is measure gravity and mass, so it's different from altimeter because you're measuring the height of the sea level. And you can see the raw data is actually going down. And then they say because altimeters say that and the tide gauges say that, they say, okay, we're going to move it up. They just adjust it like that. If you don't believe me, there's another set of data showing the same story essentially. So what they're measuring is that the Earth is not melting. Overall, it's actually gaining more mass. But they say because other thing is saying that it's melting, so we must melt it. No justification whatsoever, just adjust it. I'm sorry, that is baby science in that sense. That's why I'm not interested in this kind of chit-chatting. So again, if you quote one of the key authors on this paper, he said, insofar as the raw data is concerned, over the entire area of the global ocean, there is not only no increase in mass inferred, but that the amount of mass contained within the basin is actually decreasing. So, is the ice sheet melting or gaining mass? It's gaining mass according to this measurement, unless they show me that the measurement is totally wrong, right? So, I think punctuation really matters in this case. This happened to be a book published by some of our Australian friends called Climate Change, the Fact. That I happen to, Lord Moncton also contribute, I think, a chapter in that book. And then I guess these people from NASA and what have you, European Union, is climate.change the fact. So you can see the big difference. So indeed, I want to conclude part 1. I'm going to jump to part 2 very quickly, but not much left. Please slow down. There is actually failed experiment as far as I'm concerned. Now, tide gauges. Tide gauges, what is it? I told you, ping pong ball in a tube, right? You put it around the coastal region. By the way, they're measuring very different things from altimeter. Altimeter, you measure in the open ocean. As long as there's not much wave. When they wave, they cannot do anything, by the way. It's a very difficult problem. But the coastal region, the radar will reflect and show different signals, so they can never resolve. That's why you never put the tide gauges data with the altimeter data. That's how crazy those guys are doing. It's bad, bad stuff. So this is the distribution of some of the coastal tide gauges station that you have over different period. Early period, we don't have much, right? In India and all these places, Liverpool, and then you come down in the modern period. But they always say, in fact, you know, well, here's another puzzle, by the way. When they always measure the altimeter data, they actually say that we don't know what the value is. We're going to calibrate with the tide gauges. I say, if the tide gauges is so good, why do we need altimeter data, right? That's what they kind of do. It's all very circular. So I show you this ice sheets problem, right? So what the ice sheets will do in terms of the region or even down in Florida, because the inflection point, you have a very different land motion actually. So here's the problem now. The question to ask now, if we measure in the tide gauges in Boston and everywhere, how much of it is actually sea level change? How much of it is just the land movement? So one example now is to compare actual measurement from GPS. You all have GPS, right? Everybody have GPS? Yes? We do measure something local very accurately, okay? We compare with their what they call the Glacial isostatic adjustment model, okay? And if you measure around all this area where we have data, look what the data show. The GPS showing that basically there's a huge range of vertical land motion from -10 to about +7. But the actual measurement at the local showing is about 0. So the R square is only 2%, that's nothing. Which means the model is completely wrong, okay? Predicted from the model, the vertical axis is the model, this is the actual measurement. So from 147 locations, that's what you got. So really we have a problem here, okay? We show that on average over all this coastal region, the land is actually sinking. So when your sea level rise is actually not the sea rising, it's that your land sinking. Do you understand that? Please think about it, right? I can show you cartoon and so on. I'm almost done, yeah. So here's the code that I want to make you a guess. Everybody, please make a guess. If you see such a code, okay, saying that discrepancy, a benchmark and sea level, or this problem at the mouth of South Pass, it's a fact well known to people living in the area of Delta of Mississippi that large tracts of land were long ago abandoned in consequence of overflow by Gulf water due to the sinking of the land. Anybody want to make a guess? When was this made? Actually, a very long time ago, 1897, from a National Geographic magazine, right? We know this phenomenon. We have diverted and channeled all our river and all the sediments stay there. Sediment also adds sinking, right? Make you sink. More sediment, all the stuff all the way coming from Canada even, right? Going there. It's sinking, sinking. So New Orleans is always disaster waiting to be happen actually. It's a big kind of human problem. It has nothing to do with sea level rise. Understand it? So you cut CO2, you're not doing anything much. If you really work on the, your channelization, all kinds of things, then that would do something. You have even problem like this. This is actually in Atlantic City. I actually caught a real data that show you that they even have impact of this kind of things that they have at the pier, Atlantic City Pier, where they have this sort of event before where people have this blind horse that jump down on the thing. You can see actually detect the land motion from that. So I invite them to go to the Bureau of Imaginary Problem, right? Climate Change Division. So my bottom line is this. IPCC still say that the tide gauges is of the order of 1 to 2 millimeter per year. But I would say that the actual measurement from all the tide gauges we have is of the order of 1. Okay, big difference, by the way. And so, by the way, I explained to you what 1 mean. 1, okay, exaggerated by at least 50%. And let me see. Yeah, average is of that. By the way, what does 1 millimeter per year mean? This really, as I told yesterday, the rate of 1 millimeter per year is you go to 100 years, so you got 100 millimeter. That's about 4 inches per 100 years. Indeed, there's a comedian that I saw saying that if you don't know how to step back, 4 inches, right, in 100 years, then you really deserve to die. Okay? Maybe save the question. Almost done. Let me finish because I have so many thoughts in my head. Okay. Well, we have seen this before. I want to show you that we have seen this before. Anything from half. So I would say it's slightly lower even. Okay? Less than 1. You have seen this sort of thing from what you call paleoclimatic studies. From study of marsh and sediment, people have established that the old background is about 0.75 roughly. Okay? So I'm fairly confident. So this is another example of the result. I'll show you from different marshes region that you can show on the order of 1, no more than 1 or 2. And then you may be surprised that even IPCC say that from 1910 to 1990 that the number is about less than 1. IPCC say that. Actually, I saw this from my friend Nicholas Moner from Sweden. He's actually, if Professor Monckton can say this, he's the world #1 guy on this sea level business. He published, I don't know, close to 600 papers on this thing. And I was very shocked. I said, Moner, you must be lying. So what did I do? I do my homework. I found the exact pages where it says this. Page 641, IPCC, chapter 11. It says, the sum of this component indicate a rise of eustatic sea level rise corresponding to a change of ice volume from this period ranging from -8 to 2.2 with a central value of 0.7. So did Professor Moner lie to you? Even IPCC used to say it's of the order of 1 down. Everybody now says it's 3. So you can see they change their mind very, very quickly because they want to go towards alarmism. So the final point is that it's 4 inches in a century. I don't think we should worry about things like that. So one final point. This is a bit of a philosophy. I'm not much of a philosopher, but I have to tell you, science is very rigorous. If we give up science, I think we really should give up quite a lot of things. It's very, very bad if we play science like this. Science is not a game. It's a very serious enterprise that we want to, not to enslave ourselves from all sorts of fear, unreasonable fear, by the way. And this is what the statement of this great philosopher, Karl Popper, he's a German, isn't it, right? But he went to England. He preferred England, as you can see, not America. But he said that a theory which is not refutable by any conceivable event is non-scientific. Irrefutability is not a virtue of a theory, as often people say, but it's a vice. So with that, I finish. Thank you.